Hello, I'm Bruce DuPois. Coming up.
I should have used two accounts, one for personal, one for work-related emails. That was a mistake. I'm sorry about that. I take responsibility.
Hillary Clinton now admits she was wrong to use a personal email server while Secretary of State. Her apology coming after months of pounding that caused her poll numbers to plummet. What impact will her statement of regret have on her pursuit of the White House? Also, Donald Trump's impact on down-ballot Republican candidates. Will his sharp attacks on minority groups cause heartburn for other GOP office seekers? Senior political reporter Scott Duman is here. His thoughts and analysis straight ahead. Also, questions of conscience. In the wake of Kim Davis's refusal to issue marriage licenses to same-sex couples, how do we as a society allow people room to exercise their beliefs when those beliefs clash with the rights of others? We'll convene a special panel.
From News Channel 8, this is News Talk with Bruce DuPois.
So good to have you with us today. Hi, everybody. Welcome. A great lineup on tap for you this time. Hillary Clinton now says she regrets her decision to use a private email server during her tenure as Secretary of State. Her admission follows weeks of declining poll numbers, and it comes after repeated claims that she did nothing wrong.
What I had done was allowed. It was above board. But in retrospect, certainly, as I look back at it now, even though it was allowed, I should have used two accounts, one for personal, one for work-related emails. That was a mistake. I'm sorry about that. I take responsibility. And I'm trying to be as transparent as I possibly can to not only release 55,000 pages of my emails, turn over my server, but I am looking forward, finally, to testifying before Congress, something I've been asking for nearly a year.
Our senior political reporter, Scott Duman, joins us now. Scott, it's always great to have you here.
Thank you.
Particularly good to have you here today, as we have what can only be described as a 180 on the part of the Democratic White House frontrunner.
Yeah, earlier this week, she told the Associated Press there was no need to apologize. So we're not sure exactly what took place behind closed doors that created this pivot. We can only imagine that she saw there was no other way out except to kind of make this big mea culpa and move forward. Look, since midsummer, the number of people who have seen Hillary Clinton as unfavorable has gone up 8%. That's not something that she can tolerate in a campaign where you have someone like Joe Biden considering jumping in. You've got Bernie Sanders drawing big crowds. She should have initially stopped this pretty quickly with that United Nations appearance, her very first time addressing the matter.
Right.
She's now essentially admitting that she failed to do that, and maybe this is the best foot forward for her.
I think people will question whether this is an apology in the spirit that apologies should come from true regret, or is she basically saying, I've tried everything else and that hasn't worked, so I'll try this, because although it's the least palatable, it's the one I had hoped most to avoid, it may be the only option left, and it's basically the only thing I have yet to try, so let's give this a shot.
Yeah, I think skeptics or critics who are going to say that that's the case, they may have a little bit of firm footing there, because you'd have to wonder, I mean, how many meetings, how many conversations have taken place within the Clinton camp over the past few months about how to address this, and now they're coming to this conclusion. Look, maybe this is her way to just try and get a clean slate. We don't know. The problem for her is not necessarily the server, not necessarily the emails, because very well we could see a congressional investigation, we could see an investigation by the FBI, and they may say there's no criminality. At the time that these emails were sent back and forth, they weren't deemed classified, so she did nothing illegal or nothing really against protocol. That's all kind of a moot point, because politically, is the damage done in a way that people don't like how she handled it? So often it's not the crime, and in this case we're not saying there's a definitive crime, but for the parallel here, so often people say it's not the crime, it's the cover-up or the handling. And so did she kind of take a laissez-faire approach to it at first and say, well, I just didn't want to carry two phones, not a big deal, oh, it's a personal server, I deleted the emails that weren't important? Well, by whose standards? And so when she comes out and has to defend it over and over and over, and the news cycle continues to eat it up because we don't have closure on it, how much damage can you take as a candidate? She's very lucky that she was already the front runner by such a big margin, otherwise it could be a bigger problem.
And a lot of times the things that cause trouble are those things that seem to support a pre-existing narrative.
Yes.
And that's the case here.
And she spoke about that in that interview with David Muir, because she said, look, I've been under attack for a very, very long time as a candidate, as a first wife, as a Secretary of State. And she's right. She's very used to this. And perhaps that's why the camp didn't jump on it in this manner right away. Look, being a Clinton means being attacked.
But let me argue the reverse.
Sure.
If the knock prior to all this was the Clintons operate under their own rules, as if the rules that apply to others don't or shouldn't apply to them, they can kind of create their own playbook and be judged by that, not by the world the rest of us live in, then this moment, this controversy had real peril in it from the beginning. It shouldn't have taken all this time.
Absolutely.
And this reduction and this hit to her ratings, her approval, her polls, etc., for the light bulb to go off that this was not to say doom, but potentially dangerous.
But a legitimate problem, yes. Look, the narrative that has existed for 20-plus years, you're right, should have been enough of a precursor that they go, we don't want any bit of this tone to continue or carry over into what's a fresh campaign. And they allowed it to do it. I don't know that it's a fatal flaw in this campaign. Remember, she's still leading by a large margin in most polls. But man, what an issue that they should not have been talking about. What a terrible way to roll out your campaign. And what an incentive for someone else like a Joe Biden to jump in, if that's the case.
Does this stop the bleeding? And if it doesn't, can she make news in other ways that causes us the media to perhaps lose interest? And not that there won't be...
Yeah, she absolutely can. She can change the tone here, and I think that what it takes is, whether it's some sort of crisis, something else that she's an expert in, that she comes to the forefront, she rallies the Democratic Party, whatever it may be. The problem is, it's not just this. There's still going to be attacks on the right from the Select Committee on Benghazi. I mean, there are all these other problems that are going to kind of linger and just cling on to her campaign until she can shed them completely. I don't know that she can, because there's always going to be that really strong right-wing attack on her. She's always going to be on the defense to some degree.
Let's talk about Donald Trump. There's been some really interesting reporting over the last, let me say, 72 hours or so about people have come to accept that he is not a summer fling.
Right.
There is staying power here. Still a long way to the nomination, and things will happen. Not that they could. Things will happen, and there will be ups and downs. But people are starting to talk about the impact he's having across the party. Could he, through his statements, rhetoric, are they a double-edged sword in that they are animating him and propelling him to places most people never thought he would be, but to cause can they simultaneously cause heartburn for other GOP office seekers? And I'm not talking here about people running for the White House, or people running for sheriff, Congress, and you name it, all up and down, all across the country.
Yeah, this is really interesting, and I love this debate that's now starting to emerge on whether or not he hurts or helps the Republican ticket. On its face, let's say the guy's polling roughly 30%. He is representing a base of people who believe that he speaks what they say around the dinner table, but maybe not publicly, so it resonates. They feel akin to him because he's willing to fire off in a very common speak way. Does that help some Republicans? Does that maybe galvanize, because there are Republican voters who might not otherwise go to the poll this time, but they get on board with this Trump train and they say, sure, and when they get in that booth, do they go right down the ticket and click every Republican? Very possible. There will be a percentage of those.
He can impact turnout.
Absolutely. In a way, it could benefit a Republican candidate. The immigration issue is where I see it possibly doing the most damage, because there are going to be a lot of people, Latino voters or sympathizers of Latino voters, people who believe that there should be a grander open arm approach to immigration and illegal immigrants. Those people are going to vote against Trump, and that very well could hurt other Republicans on the ticket, because perhaps they're galvanized to go. It's a really interesting cross-section of voter, and I can't wait to see how that one plays out.
We'll discuss this more tomorrow with our friend David Mark, former Politico reporter and editor who's in town, and we'll be talking with him here tomorrow about that. I want to shift gears and talk about the debate in the Senate on the Iran nuclear deal, a debate that has begun this week. So the town hall that you're hosting here tonight comes at a great time, because there's so much news with the debate kicking off and the White House really starting to see some dividends from the push they have made to get the minimum number, let's say, of lawmakers to support the deal that perhaps will allow the president to keep the veto pen in the drawer. This is a big moment.
Well, it is, and you mentioned the White House. Let's go there first. I was there a couple of weeks ago, as you know. Was in the diplomatic room with the president, spoke with him briefly on this issue. he told our Maureen Bunyan in much more detail than he and I discussed. He did talk about the level of arm twisting that was going on by the White House. They wanted to make sure that they not only got a veto-proof majority, but they would love to just get a majority of 60-plus because that would allow them to prevent a vote from even taking the place. That way he doesn't have to use the veto pen. They're close to that number. We've got debate going on in the House today, tomorrow, a vote in the House expected Friday. I just spoke with Senator Tim Kaine of Virginia. He wrote the review bill on this, a bipartisan bill with Bob Corker of Tennessee. They don't know when the Senate's going to take it up. They have to do it by the 17th. But either way, it looks like the White House gets its victory here. This is the largest foreign policy victory this administration is going to have, and it is significant on many levels. The one thing that's really interesting that we're going to see, Bruce, going forward, especially in the campaign, is that if a Republican contender were to win the White House, what that does is throw all of this up for grabs, because several, whether it be Trump or Cruz or Rubio, have said, if I'm president, first thing I do when I get in office is scrap this Iran deal. So it's very tentative. It's important. It's significant. But if a particular Republican gets in office, we could see a lot of this wiped out. Tee up for us, if you would, the town hall meeting, who we'll hear from, what you hope comes out of it, and when it will be on. Thank you very much. This is a great opportunity for viewers if they are not 100% versed in what this Iran deal means and why you should still be paying attention even at this late date. You may say, oh, the votes are in. What do I care? They're not all in, and there's a lot still to be sorted out. The sanctions issue is still a tentative one. Tonight we're going to have on some big experts from across the spectrum who have not only helped fashion this deal that we've talked to, we've done interviews with, including Wendy Sherman over at the White House, President Obama, who we spoke with 2 weeks ago, but also some of the lawmakers voting and some experts on Iran. And they're going to tell you tonight from 7 to 8 o'clock here on News Channel 8 and around the country why you need to pay attention to this deal. It's not done just yet. It sure isn't. In fact, if we think the votes are there and this thing goes into effect, all the more reason for all of us as citizens to know what's in the deal, because this is likely the roadmap at least until January 2017 and potentially beyond. Yeah, it's a big, big day, and it's a big couple weeks here on the Hill, and everyone needs to pay attention. I know there's been a lot of preparation. I hope you can join us tonight for that. Scott Newman, thank you and good luck. Of course, have a great event. We appreciate your time. Keep it here. When we return, what happens when elected officials refuse to do their job? A look at the Kim Davis saga in a moment.